They have to get back into the fight, but it's a four-man hack. Beautiful from Ureg now, and Prophet's going to clean them up. You can see Kellex trying to stay alive here, but he's going to get bumped around himself. Note has a self-destruct, and Gamsu died before he could use his Primal Rage, and the London Spitfire looking much happier now. Now, the overtime, it's Striker on the point. Note mistakes are waiting for their chance to get in.
It is still Boston who controls the point here. Note will use the self-destruct just because he's taking so much damage coming on in. London has still not flipped the point here, Mitch. It's going to be a coalescence used by the Boston Uprising. Prophet just throws his pulse bomb into the wall there.
That could have been a big mistake, a costly one. The EMP comes in and now it's London on the back foot. Somehow the Boston Uprising have turned this around. Bit by bit they stored out. They've done it! Unbelievable!
The Boston Uprising really are an anomaly in the Overwatch League. From the very, very top of their ownership, all the way down to their players, no one approached the season quite like they did. Yes, the Uprising were unique, and no one thought it would work, but somehow it did. The Uprising, against all odds, ended up riding the longest win streak in the history of the Overwatch League so far to a playoff berth and a message. See us. Respect us. In this episode of Season in Review, we're going to take a look at the Uprising's highs, lows, and everything in between to figure just how the Uprising ended up sending this message. But first, let's find out why it needed to be sent in the first place. The Boston Uprising are owned by the Kraft Group. Now, those of you who watch American football may recognize that company as well as the name Robert Kraft. Yes, the Uprising are owned by the same company that owned the New England Patriots, an American football team that has enjoyed the most successful streak of dominance in the last decade. They also own Major League Soccer's New England Revolution, which haven't enjoyed quite the same success, but they are a mid-tier team. The point is that this team has built a few sports teams in the past, but they've never really gone into esports. Could those skills translate? Well, here's the team they built. On tank, they had Gamsu, Kalios, and Note. On DPS was Dreamcasper, Mistakes, and Striker. Finally, they had Avast, Kellex, Neko, and Snow on support. And when this roster was released, the general reaction was, who? It's not like these players had any sort of past synergy. Not only did they hail from all over the world, but almost none of them had played on the same team prior to the league. And the teams they were on, Rox Orcus, Tempo Storm, Conbox? A Freak of Freaks? Sure, a few of them hailed from more recognizable teams like LG Evil, 123, or Toronto Esports, but very few of these players had ever had much success in Pro Overwatch, nor were they well known in the public eye. You know when I said that the Shock were the only team to make a team that not to win right now? Well, I may have been wrong. With these young but unproven players, I doubt even the management was expecting to be the best team in Season 1. They were going for more of the diamonds in the rough, those hidden gems that could be polished to become stars. For now though, everyone predicted them to be at the bottom of the standings. They had no clue of the season ahead. In Stage 1, the Uprising were good. Nothing amazing, but good. Definitely much better than expected. On their way to a 6-4 record in Stage 1, the Uprising managed to give the Spitfire their first Overwatch League loss and pull out wins over some tough teams like the Valiant or the Fusion. How? Well, to be honest, at this point in the season, I wouldn't have been able to tell you a true weakness on the team. First of all, Striker came absolutely out of nowhere. I think most expected for Mistakes to be the Tracer specialist for this team, as he was known for doing that back on 123, but Striker immediately impressed with his Tracer play, earning the full-time Tracer role alongside Dreamcasper, who impressed with his incredibly deep hero pool, with Genji, Pharah, and Widowmaker being just a few. Gamsu and Note also exceeded expectations in the tank line, creating one of the most feared dive compositions in the league, along with Neko and Kellex, who were really an underrated support duo. Was anyone great? Was anyone the best at their role, or even like top 3? Other than maybe Striker? No. But they were all good, and they were working together well. All of a sudden, people were paying attention to the Uprising. Stage 2 for the Uprising was mostly the same as Stage 1. The Uprising seemed to be settling into being a middle-of-the-road team that might nab a lower seed playoff spot. Instead of experimenting with different lineups like most other teams, the Uprising committed to tightening things up with their current starting 6 as much as possible, and it was really starting to pay dividends. Their dive was strong, and their moves are coordinated. They honestly looked like a team that had been playing together for years instead of just a few months ago. It is worth mentioning, though, that Gamsu ended up missing a few games in the beginning of this stage, and the Uprising struggled in those games as a result. While it was stated it was due to illness, rumors began swirling that it was the result of the Uprising going through a fair bit of infighting between the general manager Huck, head coach Krusty, and Gamsu. The team denied this, however, and the Uprising seemed to put it back together after Gamsu's return. After another 6-4 stage, the Uprising looked like a scrappy and scary dark horse, a team that could steal an upset off of any of the top teams if they weren't careful. But then something happened. Yeah, it's time to talk about that. Real quick, does anyone remember this video? If you do, you should really qualify for a senior discount. It's my video about the Dreamcasper situation that I uploaded as it was unfolding. My first video to ever really get views and kickstart my channel. That video wasn't great, as are most people's videos when they're just starting out, so hopefully I can do the topic a bit better this time around. So here we go. No one is denying that Dreamcasper is great at Overwatch. His Genji, Pharah, Widowmaker, and McCree were all admirable, and he was filling the Ultra Flex DPS role beautifully for this team. At the start of Stage 3, however, it was revealed that he was engaging in some very shady acts with at least 2 female minors, one 16 and one 14 at the time, over Twitter direct messages. After these minors followed Dreamcasper on Twitter, he would message them saying, thank you, just innocent stuff, and conversation would start from there. Even though he had full awareness of the minors' ages and had a girlfriend at the time, Dream would constantly make sexual comments to these girls. He lied about his age, he bought them things, and then would use that to manipulate these girls into giving him nudes and sending back some of his own, which, by the way, is punishable as a felony in California. No, the minors didn't object to these things at the time, but Dreamcasper is entirely to blame for initiating these interactions, manipulating these people, and most importantly, not realizing or caring about the amount of trouble he could get into by obtaining nudes from a then 14 and 16-year-old. The whole thing is just disgusting, and I know I skimped out on details, but there are plenty of resources out there for you to look at if you're interested. Dreamcasper was suspended from the team just hours after the allegations surfaced and was released the next day. This forced Mistakes to come in and become the team's new flex DPS. As a former Tracer specialist, everyone is expecting the Uprising to fall by the wayside. But then, something amazing happened. Mistakes was serviceable on Genji and Widowmaker. The tank lines and support lines kept up their great play, bolstered by the acquisition of Aim God, giving the team 2 top-level Zenyatas. But most of all, Striker absolutely exploded on Tracer, consistently coming up with the clutch plays and stalls that the team desperately needed. It was honestly something that would make a great movie. Even though they almost lost against the Mayhem, even though they were down 0-2 against the Spitfire, even though they went to Game 5 separate times over the course of Stage 3, the Boston Uprising were the first and currently only team to ever go undefeated in a single stage. Yes, their perfect stage got foiled in the stage finals by the NYXL, but through everything, the Boston Uprising put together the most impressive stage in all of the Overwatch League to date, despite all odds. Unfortunately, the Uprising weren't able to sustain that success in Stage 4. After such a strong winning streak, it was a shock to everyone when it was announced that head coach Krusty would be leaving the team for San Francisco. Get it? Huck assumed head coach duties from then on. Maybe those rumors from Stage 2 had some merit after all. Along with that, the Uprising had a lot of trouble transitioning into the massive meta shifts of Stage 4. This meta awarded flexibility on multiple heroes rather than the mastery of one, and this was a big shift for the main tanks, as Dive made Winston the best viable main tank in most situations pre-Stage 4. Now, however, Reinhardt was played more often, and the ability to flex onto Reinhardt, Winston, and Orisa was very important. Now look, Gamsu was a fantastic Winston player, but he struggled in a Reinhardt-dominated meta. Without the coverage of a great Winston, Kellex began to struggle more and more on Mercy, getting caught out of position and picked off first in many fights. Brigitte being introduced made any kind of tracer play almost impossible, and Striker had to put away his best hero. And at the same time, mistakes became more of a problem. Sure, he was a competent Widowmaker in Stage 3, but in Stage 3 he had a world-class Tracer disrupting the other team, and a Winston that made lots of space for him to work in, and a Mercy that wasn't getting picked off too much to consistently peel for him. And Widowmaker was now the #1 target in most situations. With those circumstances, Mistakes struggled so much that the team ended up swapping Striker and Mistakes, making him the flex DPS instead of the Widowmaker specialist. This seemed to work a bit better as Strikers picked up the new hero, and after 6 straight losses, the Uprising managed to pull together 4 wins in a row to end the season and give them some momentum going into the playoffs. With all the uncertainties surrounding the Uprising's DPS, it's really unfortunate for them that their 3rd seed pitted them up against the Philadelphia Fusion in the quarterfinals. I'll be honest, for someone who just recently switched on to Widow full-time, Striker performed really well against Carpe, and could really develop into a shutdown Widowmaker player in the future. Other than that, the problems that I mentioned in Stage 4 came back to haunt them in this series and then some. Kellex was picked off first in more fights than I could count. Gamsu's Reinhardt just doesn't stack up to his Winston. Kalios was on the team for his Zarya, but often underwhelmed. Yeah, the Uprising fought hard, and they took Series 2 off of the Fusion, but Philly came back with a vengeance in Series 3, surprising them with a triple DPS composition on Volskaya, their best map, that would eventually knock them out in the first round of the playoffs. The Boston Uprising were a team that everyone, and I mean everyone, counted out at the season's beginning, but after an incredible win streak and a playoff berth, they are now a team that demands respect. I have to give props to the organization for how they handled the whole Dreamcaster situation. The punishment was handed out quickly and swiftly as soon as the Uprising knew for sure that he was in the wrong. It may have been because of their winning streak right after, but what was the most serious scandal in the Overwatch League and from a legal standpoint now only feels like a minor footnote simply because the organization handled it so well. There are quite a few things for this team to sort out in the offseason though if they want to continue competing at this level. Firstly, I don't think Gamsu is going to be leaving the team, but it can't be stressed enough that he needs to work on his Reinhardt. If he can get it on level with his Winston, then he could be considered one of the elite main tanks in Season 2. Also, this team has 2 DPS players and 5 supports. I think that's an imbalance, especially since Avast and Snow barely saw the stage all season. With the roster space that will open up, let's get a true flex DPS to go alongside Striker. Mistakes performed very well given the circumstances, but the Uprising could find someone much better to play Hanzo, Genji, or Pharah, the last of which they were really lacking. However, the Uprising, with a few tweaks, should be a strong team for years to come. With that in mind, my final grade for the Boston Uprising in Season 1 of the Overwatch League is a B. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't get tilted. Peace, nut.